Only a small group of women, maybe 5%, still carry the fire that refuses to fade. They are not special because life has been easy on them. They are special because they've chosen to keep showing up. The rest have been told to slow down, to step back, to accept that certain seasons of life are meant for stillness and quiet withdrawal. But there's a difference between rest and resignation. Between slowing down and giving up, many women have convinced themselves that fading quietly is a kind of grace, that disappearing softly into the background is the natural rhythm of aging. Yet deep inside, something aches, something whispers that there's more left to give, that the story isn't finished. The 5% hear that whisper and answer it. They rise not because they have to, but because they can't bear to vanish while still alive. It begins with something simple, something most overlook: how you stand. Your body tells stories your mouth never speaks. When your spirit bends, your shoulders follow. When hope fades, your spine starts to fold. Over time, your body begins to echo your mind. The women who refuse to disappear understand that posture is not vanity. It's a declaration. It's how you remind both yourself and the world that you are still here. Stand tall not just for beauty, but for dignity. Straighten your back as if you're pulling the invisible weight of years and turning them into strength. When you lift your chin, when you expand your chest and meet the world with open shoulders, you are saying, "I'm not done yet." Standing tall is an act of rebellion against decline. It's not a trick of confidence. It's a statement of being. The body responds to what the mind believes. When you walk hunched, when you shrink your movements, when your breath becomes shallow, your mind begins to follow. You start to see yourself smaller, weaker, older than you are. But when you stand upright, when you move with intention, you send a message through your entire being that says life still moves through me. You tell your muscles to stay awake, your lungs to fill deeply, your heart to keep rhythm. That's why posture is power. It's not just for how you look to others. It's how you communicate to yourself that you still have a place in this world. The women who hold their heads high, even in solitude, are not pretending. They are reminding themselves of who they are. Each morning when they rise and stretch, they're not just waking their bodies, they're waking their spirits. Many don't realize how posture affects everything. It influences hormones, mood, energy, confidence. Science proves that standing tall can literally lift your emotions. When your body expands, when you take up space, your brain registers that as strength. When you collapse inward, your brain senses defeat. It's a feedback loop, subtle but powerful. That's why the first act of reclaiming your life is physical. Before you rewrite your story, you must re-inhabit your body. You must stop folding in on yourself and begin to unfold back into life. There's a quiet magic in simply choosing to stand, to walk with steadiness, to move as though you belong everywhere you go. You don't have to speak loud to make your presence known. Sometimes the way you carry yourself says more than any words could. The world often teaches women to make themselves smaller, to shrink into politeness, to disappear behind humility. Over time, that lesson seeps into the body. The shoulders curve inward, the neck bows down, the breath shortens as if apologizing for existing. But the women who continue to rise unlearn this conditioning. They teach their bodies new language, one of openness, strength, and grace. They refuse to walk like apologies. They walk like affirmations. Every step says, "I deserve to be here." Every movement says, "I belong." This kind of strength is not arrogance. It's awareness. It's the quiet understanding that you have value, that your existence still holds weight in the world. When you stand tall, you are not competing with anyone. You are aligning with yourself. Standing tall in spirit is even harder than standing tall in body. It means refusing to be crushed by disappointment, refusing to give up your light because the world forgot to notice it. It means reminding yourself that dignity isn't given, it's maintained through choice. Even when no one is watching, even when your victories go unseen, you keep your spine straight because your posture is a mirror of your spirit, and your spirit deserves to stand proud. The ones who have learned this live differently, they walk through rooms not to be seen, but to see. They hold conversations not to prove, but to connect. They radiate quiet certainty. There's something magnetic about a woman who holds herself with both humility and authority, who doesn't demand attention, but naturally commands it. When life weighs on you, the instinct is to collapse. Stress tightens the muscles, sorrow pulls the shoulders down, fatigue folds the frame. It happens slowly, quietly, until one day you notice the reflection of someone who looks smaller than she remembers. But that reflection isn't truth. It's a reminder that the body keeps score, that it mirrors your emotional world, and that means it can be changed. Every time you realign yourself, you are practicing resilience. Straightening your spine after hardship is a small act of revolution. It's choosing strength in the face of gravity. The women who understand this practice it daily. They don't wait for motivation. They simply get up, roll their shoulders back, and breathe deeply into their existence. That's how they train both their bodies and their spirits to stay awake. You can't control the years that pass or the losses that come, but you can control how you meet them. You can decide that your posture will not be a reflection of defeat, that your stance will reflect gratitude, power, and readiness. When you stand tall, your heart opens, your lungs expand, your energy rises. You literally bring more life into your body. You stop folding into fear and start expanding into faith. That is not a metaphor, it's biology. Your nervous system shifts when you stand confidently. Your breathing slows, your thoughts clear, your stress levels drop. It's how the body remembers its own strength. The act may be simple, but the message is profound. Standing tall is how you tell the universe, I'm ready to receive what's next. For many women, the journey to standing tall begins the moment they stop waiting for permission. For years, they've been told to be gentle, to stay quiet, to avoid taking up space. They've learned to hide their brilliance behind modesty. But the 5% refuse to let the world dictate how much room they deserve to occupy. They know that shrinking doesn't make anyone more comfortable. It only erases the self. So they stop apologizing for their voices, their presence, their existence. They learn that self-respect is not loud, but it is unshakable. It lives in how you move, how you breathe, how you choose to show up every day. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Even when your body aches, even when your spirit feels heavy, you choose to straighten your back and meet life face forward. In every generation, there are women who carry that energy. The ones who do not let time, loss, or circumstance make them invisible. They remind others of what is possible. They are living proof that it's never too late to rise again. You can see it in the way they walk into a room, in how they lift their chin and meet your eyes. There's a clarity about them, a steadiness, a quiet power. They are not running from age. They are owning it. Their presence says, I have lived, I have learned, and I'm still becoming. That's what standing tall really means. It's not about pretending to be unshaken. It's about showing that you can still rise, still move, still exist with purpose, even after the storms have passed. Each day becomes an opportunity to remind your body that strength still lives there, waiting to be claimed again. When a woman learns to speak again after years of silence, something powerful begins to awaken inside her. For so long, she was told that her softness was her strength, that her quiet acceptance was her virtue, that her worth depended on her ability to endure without complaint. But endurance without voice becomes erasure. The moment she begins to use her words, not to please or to explain, but to express truth, she starts reclaiming territory within herself that she once surrendered. Speaking is not always about being loud. It's about alignment between what you feel and what you allow to be heard. The 5% of women who rise again understand that silence has its place, but so does speech. They speak not to argue, but to declare their existence. They've learned that every time they swallow their truth to avoid discomfort, a part of them grows smaller. So they stop minimizing themselves for the comfort of others. Finding your voice after silence is like learning to breathe after being underwater for too long. At first, it feels unnatural. The words tremble, the throat tightens, the sound is unfamiliar. Years of self-restraint echo through your chest, telling you to stay quiet, to keep peace, to avoid being misunderstood. But when you finally exhale truth, when your words meet air, something inside of you expands. You realize that you were never meant to be voiceless. You were meant to be articulate, expressive, bold in your honesty. It doesn't mean shouting or dominating conversations. It means daring to speak from your center, from the place inside you that knows what is right and refuses to pretend otherwise. That voice doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity, and clarity is magnetic. The world may resist it at first, but eventually it listens. For many women, rediscovering their voice happens in solitude. It's not always through confrontation or public declaration. It starts quietly, in journals, in whispered prayers, in late night reflections. You begin writing down what you were once afraid to say out loud. You start noticing how many of your opinions were shaped to be acceptable, how often you edited yourself to avoid judgment. That awareness is the first rebellion. The moment you see how often you've been silenced, you start choosing differently. You start telling yourself the truth, even when no one else hears it. You stop performing peace and start creating real peace, the kind that comes from authenticity. You begin to understand that your silence was never golden. If it cost you your voice, the world often teaches women that silence is a virtue and anger is unbecoming. But anger is not the enemy. It is a signal, a compass pointing towards something that needs attention. The 5% of women who rise again don't suppress their emotions. They refine them. They learn to translate anger into action, pain into purpose, fear into focus. Their voices become instruments of transformation rather than weapons of destruction. They understand that speaking truth doesn't mean burning bridges. It means building boundaries. When you speak clearly and calmly about what you need, what you believe, and what you will no longer tolerate, you begin shaping your reality instead of reacting to it. You stop living on the terms of others and start defining your own. Finding your voice also means confronting the ways you've been silenced by love. So many women mistake quietness for harmony. They stop speaking to avoid conflict, believing that silence keeps relationships peaceful. But silence that hides truth is a slow poison. It doesn't protect love, it weakens it. True connection requires honesty, even when it shakes the ground. The women who rise again learn to speak not to wound, but to clarify. They say, "This is who I am. This is what I feel. This is what I need." And in doing so, they stop betraying themselves for the illusion of peace. They understand that love built on suppression isn't love. It's control disguised as care. Speaking up becomes their act of self-respect. And self-respect is the root of all genuine connection. The rediscovery of voice doesn't only change relationships, it reshapes destinies. When a woman begins to speak from her truth, opportunities appear that once seemed unreachable. People begin to respond differently to her. Doors open not because the world suddenly became kinder, but because she began knocking with authority. Her energy shifts, her words carry weight, her presence commands attention. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the energy of someone who finally knows her own power. She no longer asks for validation because her voice itself is proof of her worth. She becomes both student and teacher of her own experience. Every sentence she speaks becomes a thread weaving together the parts of her that were once fragmented. It's important to understand that voice doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes through art, movement, creation, presence. Some women paint instead of preach. Some dance their truths. Some write in silence. Some serve others quietly, but with unmistakable conviction. Voice is not volume, it's vibration. It's the way your inner truth expresses itself through whatever medium feels natural. When your actions align with your inner knowing, you are speaking, even if you never utter a word. That's why the 5% who rise don't all look the same. Some are outspoken, others serene. Some command crowds, others heal one soul at a time. What unites them is authenticity. The refusal to live muted lives, reclaiming your voice, also requires shedding guilt. Many women were raised to believe that having needs is selfish, that expressing boundaries is rude. That saying, no, means being difficult. So they learn to overgive, overplease, over-apologize. But guilt is not guidance, it's conditioning. And once you see it for what it is, you begin to unlearn it. You realize that your voice doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sovereign. You start saying no without explanation, yes without fear, and silence without shame. You start trusting that your words have power not because they are perfect, but because they are honest. That honesty becomes the foundation of your peace. When you speak truthfully, you stop performing for acceptance. You begin living for integrity. The process of reclaiming voice can feel lonely because authenticity often alienates those who benefit from your silence. The world prefers agreeable women. But the women who rise again are not here to be agreeable. They are here to be awake. They know that being understood is less important than being real. Their words may challenge, their tone may unsettle, their presence may provoke reflection in others. But that's the cost of awakening. You cannot wake others without disturbing their dreams. The ones who truly value you will adjust. The rest will fall away. This pruning is painful but necessary. Silence kept you surrounded. Truth will keep you aligned. That's how your voice becomes both filter and compass. As a woman rediscovers her voice, she also rediscovers her story. She starts retelling her life not as a sequence of wounds, but as a map of resilience. Every time she speaks about what she once hid, the shame loses power. Every time she shares her experience, another woman somewhere feels less alone. That's how collective healing begins, not with movements, but with moments of shared truth. The voice of one honest woman can echo through generations. It teaches others that they don't have to disappear to be loved, that they don't have to stay silent to be respected. The ripple effect of truth is unstoppable once it begins. The women who rise again do not wait for permission to speak. They give themselves that permission. They speak even when their voice shakes, even when no one claps, even when the room goes quiet. They understand that expression is freedom, and freedom is not negotiable. They know that finding your voice is not a one-time act. It's a lifelong practice. Some days you'll speak boldly, other days you'll whisper through tears. What matters is that you never return to silence out of fear, because your words, your truth, your voice, they are the evidence that you are still becoming, still alive, still powerful beyond what the world remembers. There comes a point in every woman's life when she must face herself in complete honesty, stripped of all titles, roles, and expectations. It is a quiet reckoning, the kind that doesn't make noise but shifts everything inside. For years, she may have defined herself by what she did for others, mother, daughter, partner, caretaker, friend. But there comes a moment when all of that fades into the background, and she must ask, who am I without the giving, without the pleasing, without the pretending? This is the point where the real transformation begins. The 5% of women who rise again have walked through this mirror. They've looked at their own reflection without filters, without judgment, and faced the truth that somewhere along the way, they forgot to belong to themselves. Rediscovering that belonging is not about changing who they are, it's about remembering who they were before the world told them who to be. This journey of self-return is not easy. It asks you to unlearn everything that once made you feel safe. It requires peeling away layers of expectation, reputation, and habit until all that's left is your essence. For most, this process begins in pain, maybe through betrayal, loss, or a quiet exhaustion that can no longer be ignored. The old patterns stop working. The roles that once defined you start to feel too small. That's when the awakening begins. You realize that survival is no longer enough. You crave aliveness. You stop asking, what do they need from me? And begin asking, what does my soul need from me? This shift feels uncomfortable at first because it demands honesty. It reveals all the ways you've abandoned yourself for acceptance. But that discomfort is sacred. It's the sign that you are coming home. The women who rise again know that reconnection doesn't happen through perfection. It happens through permission. Permission to rest, to feel, to fail, to desire, to change. They stop punishing themselves for not being who others expect them to be. They begin nurturing themselves the way they've nurtured everyone else. For years, their love flowed outward. Now, it turns inward, not in selfishness, but in restoration. They learn to listen to their bodies again, to trust their instincts, to honor their intuition. They stop waiting for external validation because they realize that the deepest form of love is self-recognition. You cannot pour from an empty vessel, and you cannot shine while hiding your own light. The moment you choose yourself, everything shifts. The energy you once gave away starts returning, and you begin to move through life with grounded clarity. Rediscovering yourself also means revisiting the dreams you buried. Every woman carries a secret list of things she once wanted to do, but convinced herself she couldn't. Maybe it was a career, a passion, a journey, a love, a version of herself that felt too bold for the world around her. The women who rise again open that list and look at it without shame. They ask, why not now? They stop believing the lie that it's too late. They understand that time doesn't take dreams away. It simply waits for you to be ready to pursue them without fear. When you start reclaiming your desires, you begin to feel alive again. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you finally allow yourself to want. Desire, in its purest form, is not greed. It's the compass of the soul pointing you toward fulfillment. This phase of rediscovery often looks like solitude. Not loneliness, but chosen stillness. The 5% know that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. Solitude is where the noise quiets enough for you to hear your own heartbeat again. It's where you begin to distinguish between your true voice and the voices of those who shaped you. Many fear this stillness because it strips away distraction, but the women who embrace it emerge with unshakable self-knowledge. They stop running from themselves and begin sitting with themselves. They learn to find comfort in their own company, to fill their own silence with presence instead of anxiety. That's where power grows, in the space where you no longer need noise to feel alive. When a woman begins to truly know herself again, her energy changes in ways that others can't quite explain. She becomes more selective with her time, more deliberate with her words, more peaceful in her boundaries. She no longer chases people or outcomes. She understands that alignment attracts more than effort ever could. She becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because authenticity radiates. The 5% of women who live in this state are not unreachable or extraordinary. They are simply consistent in honoring themselves. They wake each day and choose presence over performance. They are soft but not fragile, kind but not strong but not hardened. There is a quiet power in a woman who knows who she is and refuses to negotiate that truth. This kind of self-awareness also changes how she handles pain. She stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Pain becomes her professor, not her prison. She no longer avoids discomfort. She studies it. She learns to extract wisdom from heartbreak, grace from loss. She strength from failure. She stops letting circumstances define her worth. Instead, she uses them to refine her clarity. When others see endings, she sees beginnings. When others see loss, she sees direction. That's the difference between surviving and awakening. It's not that she no longer feels pain. It's that she no longer fears it. She's learned that everything meant to break her has also built her. Every wound became a doorway to deeper understanding of who she is and what she's capable of. Rediscovering yourself also means forgiving yourself for staying too long, for settling too often, for silencing your instincts, for loving those who couldn't love you back. The 5% of women who rise know that self-forgiveness is not about excusing mistakes, it's about releasing shame. You cannot move forward while dragging the weight of regret. You must lay it down and accept that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Once you do, you stop defining yourself by your past and start shaping your future from a place of peace. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's strength. It's saying, "I deserve my own compassion." That compassion becomes fuel for everything that follows. It softens your edges without dimming your fire. The women who rise again also learn to protect their energy as fiercely as they once protected others. They become guardians of their peace. They stop saying yes out of guilt and start saying no out of wisdom. They realize that boundaries are not walls. They're doors that only open for what aligns. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It's sacred. It's how you preserve the space needed to continue growing. The more you honor your limits, the more room you create for what truly nourishes you. You stop participating in drama, stop chasing validation, stop explaining your worth. You no longer feel the need to prove your value to anyone because your peace becomes proof enough. And as she returns to herself, she begins to shine in ways that are impossible to ignore, not with loud declarations or forced confidence, but with effortless authenticity. She becomes her own standard, her own muse, her own foundation. She learns that self-love is not just affirmations and rituals, it's choices. The choice to rest when tired, the choice to leave when disrespected, the choice to try again after failing, the choice to believe in herself even when no one else does. Each choice becomes an act of self-loyalty, and that loyalty transforms her from within. Others may see confidence, but what they're really witnessing is peace. The peace of a woman who has stopped abandoning herself. The peace of someone who no longer needs to be saved because she finally realized she was her own rescue all along. The women who rise again understand that self-discovery never ends. It's a lifelong unfolding, a constant returning to your essence. There will be days when you forget, when you slip back into old patterns, when fear tries to reclaim space. But every time you remember, you return stronger, you rebuild faster, you rise higher. Because once you've met your true self, you can never completely lose her again. She waits patiently beneath the noise, ready to guide you home each time you wander. And that is the quiet miracle of the 5%. They are not perfect, not untouched by life's storms. They are simply awake, aware, and anchored in themselves. They carry their past not as weight, but as wisdom, and their future not as fear, but as promise. When a woman reaches the stage where her presence begins to feel different, where her energy no longer seeks to prove, but simply to exist, she steps into a new kind of power. It is not loud, not desperate, not performative. It's the power of a woman who has seen enough, lost enough, learned enough to know that her peace is priceless. This is where the transformation becomes visible, not just in her actions, but in her aura. People sense it when she enters a room. The calm certainty, the unshakable balance. She is no longer trying to be liked, understood, or approved of. She has outgrown the need for external validation. Her confidence is rooted in quiet self-acceptance, not in noise. The 5% of women who live in this energy have learned that power does not come from control. It comes from surrender. Surrender not in defeat, but in trust. Trust in themselves, in life, in timing. This kind of inner power doesn't come from reading books or listening to speeches. It's born through experience, through enduring what once seemed unbearable and coming out softer instead of bitter. It's forged in the silence of heartbreak, in the stillness after chaos, in the calm that follows letting go. These women no longer seek revenge or explanations. They've realized that the greatest revenge is peace. When you stop needing others to see your worth, you start radiating it effortlessly. You stop running after love because you've learned that love that must be chased is not love. It's hunger. You stop begging for closure because you've learned to give it to yourself. You stop waiting for the world to give you recognition because you've already given yourself permission to exist fully. The world often misunderstands this type of woman. Her quiet confidence is mistaken for arrogance, her boundaries for coldness, her peace for indifference. But she doesn't explain herself anymore. She's spent years doing that and learned that peace doesn't require defense. Her power lies in what she doesn't respond to. She's no longer reactive because her worth isn't tied to the chaos around her. When she walks away from conflict, it's not because she's weak. It's because she's wise enough to know her energy is sacred. The 5% live by one silent rule: not everything deserves a reaction. They've mastered the art of restraint, of choosing silence where others choose drama, of maintaining grace where others would crumble. This restraint is not suppression, it's sovereignty. It's the choice to protect inner calm above all else. Their strength no longer comes from force, but from flow. They've learned to move with life instead of against it. When doors close, they don't panic. They trust that something else is aligning. They've seen enough cycles to understand that loss is often direction in disguise. This understanding gives them a patience that feels almost supernatural. They no longer rush outcomes because they know that anything meant for them cannot be delayed, and anything not meant for them cannot be forced. This deep trust in timing gives them freedom. They stop competing, comparing, and chasing. They focus inward, tend to their inner world, and allow life to unfold naturally. And when it does, it unfolds beautifully because their energy is aligned with peace rather than pressure. These women also begin to understand the language of energy. They no longer ignore how things make them feel. They pay attention to the subtle shifts, the heaviness that comes after certain conversations, the lightness that follows certain decisions, the peace that surrounds certain people. They choose based on vibration, not obligation. They stop doing things out of guilt or duty and start doing them out of authenticity. If it doesn't bring peace, it doesn't belong. This doesn't make them selfish. It makes them discerning. They know that protecting their energy isn't about isolating themselves. It's about choosing environments that allow them to thrive. When your energy is balanced, your life aligns. You attract calm instead of chaos, love instead of attachment, abundance instead of scarcity. With time, this state of alignment begins to reflect in every part of life. Relationships become simpler. They no longer chase unavailable people or tolerate inconsistency. They don't argue to prove points because they understand that truth doesn't need convincing. They value effort, consistency, and emotional honesty. If someone cannot meet them there, they simply detach with grace. They don't seek closure through conflict. They find it through clarity. Their peace matters more than being right. Love to them is no longer about possession or validation. It's about partnership, respect, and freedom. The 5% understand that real love doesn't demand that you shrink. It invites you to expand. They no longer confuse attachment for connection. They've learned that the most powerful form of love is one that allows both people to remain whole. Their relationship with themselves also evolves. They begin to treat their mind and body as sacred spaces. They rest without guilt, nourish themselves with care, and speak kindly to their reflection. They stop criticizing their flaws and start honoring their stories. Every wrinkle becomes a reminder of laughter, every scar a symbol of survival. They dress for themselves, speak for themselves, live for themselves. They no longer chase youth because they understand that beauty is not about age. It's about presence. The kind of woman who carries peace radiates something no external feature can replicate. It's the glow of authenticity, the light of someone who has accepted herself completely. This is what the world sees and calls grace. But it's more than that. It's self, reverence, and as their inner world transforms, their outer world follows. Opportunities start finding them instead of the other way around. They attract better friendships, deeper conversations, more meaningful experiences. The universe responds differently to women who move with intention. It seems to conspire in their favor, not because they're lucky, but because they're aligned. They don't waste energy on what's fading. They pour energy into what's growing. Their focus becomes their superpower. They understand that energy flows where attention goes, so they give their attention only to what adds value. Their life becomes simpler, quieter, but richer. They don't crave constant excitement. They crave consistency, peace, and purpose. This simplicity becomes the new definition of success. They also begin to embody leadership in an entirely new way. Not through control, but through example. They inspire others not by telling them what to do, but by living truthfully. Younger women look at them and see what freedom looks like. They show that power doesn't mean hardness, that kindness doesn't mean weakness, that femininity and strength can coexist without contradiction. Their presence gives permission to others to slow down, to heal, to become whole. That's the ripple effect of the 5%. They don't try to change others, but their authenticity changes everything around them. They've become living proof that peace is not a destination, but a daily practice. Every choice they make, every boundary they set, every truth they speak is a prayer of alignment. The final stage of this transformation is detachment, not from life, but from control. They no longer try to manipulate outcomes or force plans to fit. They've learned to trust the unfolding. They still have goals and visions, but they hold them with open hands. They move forward with intention, but without anxiety. This balance between ambition and surrender makes them unstoppable. They know that what is meant for them cannot miss them, and what misses them was never meant for them. That realization dissolves fear. They stop chasing timelines, stop comparing progress, stop doubting their pace. They begin to live fully in the moment, grounded yet open, disciplined yet free. This kind of peace cannot be taught. It must be lived. The 5% of women who reach this state are not without pain, but they are without pretense. They no longer pretend to be okay. They simply are. They no longer hide their scars. They honor them. They no longer fear solitude. They cherish it. They have learned to live without the constant noise of approval, to thrive without attention, to love without losing themselves. And while the world rushes and competes, they move slowly, deliberately, intentionally. Every step they take is guided by one truth: nothing real can be lost. Their calm becomes contagious. Their presence becomes medicine. Their life becomes an example of what it means to rise, to heal, to exist fully in your own light without needing permission from anyone to shine. There is a sacred kind of strength that comes when a woman has walked through fire and no longer fears the flames. She has been tested by time, tempered by pain, softened by compassion, and sharpened by wisdom. She has learned that survival was never the goal. Transformation was. The final stage of her awakening is not about proving anything to the world. It's about living in harmony with herself. The battles she once fought to be seen are no longer necessary because she now sees herself with perfect clarity. The validation she once sought from others feels weightless compared to the peace she feels within. She is no longer chasing healing, love, or purpose. She embodies them. This is where the 5% of women live, not above others, but deeply rooted within themselves, grounded, whole, untouchable in their serenity. This stage is not loud or dramatic. It's subtle, steady, and unshakable. The power of a woman who has truly returned to herself is quiet because she no longer needs to announce her worth. She doesn't seek attention because she has become her own witness. The noise that once surrounded her life fades into stillness, and in that stillness she discovers freedom. She no longer measures success by comparison or recognition, but by the depth of her peace. She lives in rhythm with her truth, no longer rushing toward anything, no longer resisting what is. She understands that everything unfolds at the pace it should, and so she moves through life without urgency. Her calm is not the absence of chaos, it's the mastery of response. She knows how to hold herself steady no matter what the world throws her way. In this phase, her presence begins to speak louder than her words ever could. People feel something different when they are near her. A stillness that disarms, a gentleness that heals, a strength that reassures. She does not preach or persuade. She simply embodies the lesson. She has become the message she once searched for. The 5% who reach this point are not trying to teach anyone, yet they become teachers simply by existing in truth. They no longer talk about boundaries, they live them. They no longer discuss self-worth, they emanate it. Their example reminds others of what is possible when you stop betraying yourself. They are not untouched by struggle, but their relationship with struggle has changed. They meet it with acceptance, walk through it with grace, and leave it behind without bitterness. This kind of woman doesn't need to control outcomes anymore because she has mastered detachment. She loves deeply, but without possession. She gives freely, but without depletion. She works hard, but without burnout. She has learned the art of balance, not as perfection, but as flow. She allows life to move through her rather than trying to control every turn. She has seen enough to know that what leaves makes room for what's meant to stay. That realization allows her to move lightly through change. She can release people, seasons, and chapters without resentment because she trusts that every ending carries the seed of something new. Her faith in life has replaced her fear of loss. That faith is her anchor. She is no longer driven by scarcity or desperation. She operates from abundance, knowing that everything meant for her will always find its way her relationship with time also transforms. She stops seeing age as something to fear and starts seeing it as a privilege. She no longer mourns youth because she understands that beauty without wisdom is temporary, but wisdom with grace is eternal. Her reflection becomes her friend, not her judge. She smiles at the lines on her face because they tell stories of laughter, sorrow, endurance, and growth. She no longer hides from change because she knows that change is proof of life. Every season of her existence carries its own rhythm, and she dances with each one. The frantic urgency of youth has been replaced by the quiet confidence of knowing that she has time. Not to do everything, but to do what matters. And that is enough. Her connection to the divine deepens, not through rituals or doctrine, but through presence. She sees God, the universe, or whatever name she gives to the sacred, in everything. The morning light, the sound of rain, the breath in her chest. She doesn't seek miracles, she recognizes them. Gratitude becomes her default state. She doesn't pray out of desperation, but out of communion. Her faith is no longer something she talks about. It's something she lives. It shows in the way she forgives quickly, in the way she releases control, in the way she trusts, even when she cannot see the outcome. Her spirituality is not loud. It's woven into every choice, every gesture, every moment of stillness. It's the quiet knowing that she is held, guided, and never alone. In this stage, her relationships take on new meaning. She no longer needs crowds, validation, or constant companionship. She cherishes depth over quantity. Her circle becomes smaller, but her connections grow richer. She is drawn to those who speak truth without ego, who give without expectation, who see her without projection. Superficial interactions no longer satisfy her. She has no interest in drama or pretense. She would rather sit in silence with authenticity than in conversation filled with noise. The people who remain in her life are those who bring peace, not pressure. She reciprocates that peace fully. Her love is no longer conditional or performative. It's steady, nourishing, and liberating. She doesn't love to be needed. She loves because it's her nature. Her priorities also shift. She begins to value experiences over possessions, presence over productivity, meaning over material. She realizes that the things she once chased never held the satisfaction she thought they would. Now, simplicity feels luxurious. A quiet morning, a slow walk, a deep conversation, a moment of solitude, these become her treasures. She no longer craves constant stimulation because she has found fulfillment within. This contentment changes how she shows up in the world. She creates not for validation, but for joy. She works not to prove her worth, but to express her gifts. Her actions are not reactions. They are extensions of peace. And because of this, everything she touches carries her energy. The projects she builds, the people she interacts with, the spaces she inhabits, all reflect her inner calm. Even in moments of uncertainty, she remains composed. She knows that clarity always comes when it's meant to. She has stopped trying to rush answers. Instead, she listens. She trusts her intuition, that quiet voice that never lies. She moves when it feels right and rests when it doesn't. She's no longer chasing alignment. She's living in it. That's why things seem to flow easily around her. It's not luck. It's alignment with truth. She has become so tuned to her own rhythm that even when storms arise, she sways but never breaks. Her peace is not fragile. It's rooted. It's the kind of peace that comes from having met every version of yourself and choosing to love them all. The final transformation of the 5% is the embodiment of purpose. Not the kind that comes with grand missions or public recognition, but the kind that turns ordinary life into sacred practice. Whatever she does, whether she's working, creating, caring, or simply existing, she does it with intention. She knows that meaning is not found in big gestures, but in consistent presence. Her life becomes her message, her peace, her legacy. She gives not to be remembered, but because giving feels natural. Her impact is quiet but lasting, felt in the way people leave her presence lighter, calmer, more certain of their own worth. She becomes a mirror, reflecting back to others the truth of who they are beneath their own layers of noise and fear. And when life tests her again, as it inevitably does, she no longer sees it as punishment. She greets the challenges as invitations to deepen, to soften, to trust even more. She has learned that evolution never ends, that growth is infinite. There is no arrival point, only expansion. The 5% live in that awareness. They don't seek to escape life, but to embrace it fully. They have learned the art of surrender, not because they are weak, but because they finally understand strength. It's not in resistance, not in control, but in the ability to stay open through it all. To remain kind in a cruel world, hopeful in uncertain times, and grounded in a constantly shifting reality, this is the final awakening. The moment a woman realizes she is both the storm and the calm, the wound and the healer, the question and the answer, the ending and the beginning all at once,